The city of Chicago was alive with its usual chaos that evening. Cars honked impatiently as they crawled through traffic, while pedestrians hurried along the sidewalks, trying to escape the biting cold. Streetlights cast long shadows across the pavement, their glow reflecting off puddles left behind by an earlier rainstorm. It was one of those nights where everything seemed normal on the surface but carried an undercurrent of unease beneath it all. Officer Daniel Carter sat in his patrol car, gripping the steering wheel tightly. His eyes scanned the streets with a mix of boredom and irritation. He had been on duty for hours and nothing exciting had happened yet. But Daniel wasn't the kind of person who enjoyed quiet nights. To him, peace meant missed opportunities, to catch criminals, to assert authority, or simply to remind people who was in charge. And tonight, he felt restless. His thoughts were interrupted when he spotted someone walking near an abandoned warehouse district. The figure moved with purpose, almost too confidently for this part of town. Squinting through the windshield, Daniel noticed it was a woman. She wore dark clothes, jeans, boots, and a jacket, and carried a small bag slung over her shoulder. Something about her demeanor caught his attention. Most people avoided this area after sunset unless they had something to hide. Daniel parked his car and stepped out, his heavy boots echoing against the wet asphalt. "Hey!" he called out, his voice sharp and commanding. "You there, stop, right where you are." The woman turned slowly, her face calm despite the sudden confrontation. She was younger than Daniel had expected, maybe in her early 30s, with smooth brown skin and sharp features. Her posture was relaxed, almost casual, as if she didn't see him as a threat. Daniel frowned. People usually flinched or stammered when addressed like that. Not her. "Can I help you, officer?" she asked, her tone polite but firm. "What are you doing around here?" Daniel demanded, ignoring her question. He took a step closer, towering over her. "This isn't exactly the safest neighborhood." "I'm aware," she replied evenly, "but I have business here." "What kind of business?" His tone grew more aggressive. "You don't look like you belong in this part of town." She raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed by his attitude. "I could say the same about you," she shot back. "But since you're asking, I'm investigating some unusual activity. Now, if you'll excuse me." Before she could turn away, Daniel grabbed her arm. "Not so fast," he snapped. "You think I'm going to let you walk off without explaining yourself?" The woman pulled her arm free, her expression hardening. "Let go of me," she said, her voice low and dangerous. "Or you'll regret it." Daniel scoffed. "Oh, really? Who do you think you are, talking to me like that?" Instead of answering, the woman reached into her pocket and pulled out a badge. "Special Agent Maya Johnson," she said, holding it up so he could see. "Federal Task Force. I suggest you check your attitude before you get yourself into trouble." For a moment, Daniel froze. The badge looked legitimate, but his pride wouldn't let him back down. Instead, his frustration boiled over. All the anger he'd been carrying throughout his shift. The boredom, the restlessness, the resentment toward anyone he thought didn't deserve respect, exploded in an instant. "You think flashing that piece of metal makes you special?" He spat, his words laced with venom. "You're just another outsider poking your nose where it doesn't belong." Maya's patience was wearing thin. "Listen carefully," she said, stepping closer until they were face to face. "I don't care what your problem is, but you need to stand down, right now." But Daniel wasn't listening anymore. His vision narrowed, consumed by rage and prejudice. Without thinking, he swung his fist, aiming straight for her face. The punch landed with a sickening thud, catching Maya off guard. For a split second, she staggered back, clutching her jaw. Then silence. Daniel stood there, breathing heavily, his chest rising and falling with each labored breath. He expected her to crumple, to cry, to beg for mercy. That's what always happened in situations like this. Or at least, that's what he told himself. But Maya didn't crumple. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. Instead, she straightened up, her eyes blazing with fury. Before Daniel could react, she retaliated with a single powerful punch. Her fist connected with his nose with such force that he stumbled backward, landing hard on the ground. Blood trickled from his nostrils, as he stared up at her, stunned and humiliated. "That was a mistake," Maya said, her voice icy. She leaned down, grabbing him by the collar. "Now, listen to me. I am a federal agent working on a classified mission. If you interfere again, I will make sure you regret it far more than that broken nose. Do we understand each other?" Daniel nodded weakly, too shocked to speak. Maya released him, wiping her hands as if brushing off dirt. Then, without another word, she walked away, disappearing into the shadows of the warehouse district. As Daniel sat there on the cold pavement nursing his injuries, reality began to sink in. He had just assaulted a federal agent, a black woman no less, and she had handled him like he was nothing. His reputation, his career, everything he had worked, for it was all hanging by a thread now, and deep down, though he wouldn't admit it, he knew he deserved every bit of what was coming to him. Meanwhile, Maya continued her mission, her focus unshaken despite the interruption. She couldn't afford distractions, not when lives depended on her success. But as she moved deeper into the heart of the abandoned warehouses, she couldn't help but feel a pang of disappointment. Racism and ignorance weren't new to her, but encountering them in the middle of such critical work only reinforced why she fought so hard in the first place. The night stretched on, filled with tension and uncertainty. For both Daniel and Maya, it would be a turning point, one that neither of them could have anticipated. Daniel Carter sat in his patrol car later that night, replaying the events over and over in his mind. His nose still throbbed painfully, a constant reminder of how badly things had gone wrong. He'd let his anger get the better of him, and now, he was paying the price, not just physically but mentally too. Every time he thought about Special Agent Maya Johnson standing over him, calm and unshaken after knocking him flat, he felt a mix of shame and resentment bubbling inside him. But it wasn't just the punch that bothered him. It was her confidence, her authority, the way she hadn't backed down even when he tried to intimidate her. Daniel prided himself on being someone people feared or respected, or at least listened to. But Maya didn't fall into any of those categories. She was different, and that difference made him uncomfortable. The next morning, Daniel found himself sitting in front of his superior, Captain Lewis, in a small office at the precinct. The captain's expression was grim as he slid a folder across the desk. "You assaulted a federal agent last night," he said bluntly. "Do you have anything to say for yourself?" Daniel opened his mouth to defend himself, but no words came out. What could he say? That he'd acted out of frustration? That he'd been provoked? None of it would matter now. Instead, he clenched his fists and stared at the floor. Captain Lewis sighed heavily. "Look, Daniel, we both know this isn't going to end well if it goes public. Internal affairs is already breathing down my neck, but there might be a way to fix this, if you're willing to cooperate." "What do you mean?" Daniel asked cautiously. "Agent Johnson has agreed not to press charges, under one condition." The captain leaned forward, fixing Daniel with a serious gaze. "She wants your help with her investigation. Apparently, whatever she's working on is big enough that she can't afford distractions, but she also doesn't trust you running loose without supervision." Daniel's stomach sank. Working alongside the very person he'd attacked? It sounded like some kind of twisted punishment. But before he could protest, Captain Lewis cut him off. "This is your chance to make things right, Daniel. Screw this up and I won't be able to protect you anymore. Got it?" Reluctantly, Daniel nodded. He didn't have much of a choice. Later, that day, Daniel met Maya outside the same warehouse district where their confrontation had taken place. She stood waiting for him, arms crossed, looking as composed as ever. There was no sign of anger in her expression, only determination. "You're late," she said simply as he approached. "Sorry," Daniel muttered, avoiding eye contact. He wasn't used to apologizing, especially not to someone like her. Maya glanced at him briefly before turning toward the warehouses. "Let's go. We don't have time to waste." As they walked together, Daniel couldn't help but notice how focused she was. Her movements were deliberate, her eyes scanning every shadow and corner. She carried herself like someone who knew exactly what she was doing, and wasn't afraid to take charge. "So, what am I supposed to do?" Daniel asked gruffly, breaking the silence. "For now, follow my lead and stay out of my way," Maya replied without looking at him. "If you see something suspicious, tell me. Otherwise, keep your mouth shut." Daniel bristled at her tone but bit back a retort. He reminded himself why he was here, to save his own skin. Arguing wouldn't help. Inside one of the warehouses, Maya led him to a hidden door partially concealed by debris. She knelt down and examined the lock, pulling a small device from her bag. Within seconds, the door clicked open, revealing a narrow staircase leading downward. "This is where it gets tricky," Maya said, glancing at him. "Stay close and try not to trip over anything. These places aren't exactly safe." The air grew colder as they descended into the basement. Fluorescent lights buzzed faintly overhead, illuminating rows of strange-looking equipment scattered across makeshift workbenches. Some of the devices glowed softly, emitting an otherworldly hum that sent chills down Daniel's spine. "What is all this stuff?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Alien tech," Maya replied, her tone matter-of-fact. "Someone's been smuggling it into the city and experimenting with it. My job is to figure out who and stop them." Daniel stared at her, wide-eyed. Alien technology. Was she serious? For a moment he wondered if this whole thing was some elaborate prank. But the look on Maya's face told him otherwise. She moved to one of the tables and picked up a small orb-like object. It pulsed rhythmically in her hand, casting shifting patterns of light across the room. "This is what I'm tracking," she explained. "It emits energy signals that interfere with electronic systems. If it falls into the wrong hands." She trailed off, letting the implications hang in the air. Daniel swallowed hard. This wasn't just some routine investigation. It was something far bigger than he'd imagined. As Maya continued examining the equipment, Daniel wandered around the room, trying to wrap his head around everything. He noticed a stack of documents lying on one of the benches and picked them up curiously. They were written in a language he didn't recognize, filled with symbols and diagrams that looked almost alien themselves. "Don't touch that," Maya snapped suddenly, startling him. She hurried over and snatched the papers from his hands. "These aren't toys, Daniel. One wrong move and we could blow this entire place sky high." Daniel raised his hands defensively, feeling foolish. "I didn't know," he mumbled. "That's the problem," Maya said sharply. "You don't think before you act. Whether it's picking fights or handling dangerous materials, you just charge ahead without considering the consequences." Her words stung, but Daniel couldn't deny they were true. He'd spent years relying on brute force and intimidation to get results, rarely stopping to consider the bigger picture. Now, faced with something as complex and high-stakes as this, he realized how inadequate his methods really were. For the rest of the afternoon, Daniel did his best to stay out of Maya's way while she worked. She seemed to know exactly what she was looking for, moving efficiently between the tables and jotting notes in a small notebook. Occasionally, she'd pause to explain something to him, how the energy readings pointed to recent activity, or how certain components hinted at human involvement. But most of the time, she remained silent, lost in thought. Despite his initial reluctance, Daniel found himself watching her closely. There was something admirable about the way she handled herself, calm, methodical, and completely unfazed by the bizarre nature of the task at hand. He couldn't help but feel a flicker of respect, though he wasn't ready to admit it yet. By the time they left the warehouse, the sun had set, casting the city in darkness once again. As they walked back to their vehicles, Maya stopped and turned to face him. "We'll meet again tomorrow," she said firmly. "Same time, same place. Don't be late." Daniel nodded, unsure of what else to say. For the first time in a long time, he felt uncertain about his role, not just in this investigation, but in life itself. As Maya drove away, Daniel stood there for a moment, staring after her. Whatever lay ahead, he knew one thing for sure. Things were about to change. For better or worse. The next day felt different for Daniel Carter. As he drove back to the warehouse district, His mind kept replaying the previous night's events, the eerie alien tech, Maya's calm authority, and the uneasy realization that he was completely out of his depth. For years, Daniel had prided himself on being tough, someone who could handle anything life threw at him. But now, standing beside someone like Maya, he couldn't help but feel small and inadequate. When he arrived, Maya was already waiting for him outside the same warehouse. She looked sharp and focused, wearing her tactical gear with ease. Her bag was slung over one shoulder, packed with tools and gadgets Daniel didn't fully understand. He climbed out of his car, hesitating before approaching her. "You're on time," she said, glancing at him briefly. "Let's go." Daniel nodded, following her inside without a word. This time, they didn't waste any moments getting down to business. Maya led him deeper into the building, heading toward a section she hadn't explored yet. She explained that new energy readings had appeared overnight, suggesting recent activity. "This place is bigger than it looks," Maya said as they moved through the dimly lit corridors. "Whoever's running this operation knows what they're doing. They've got layers of security, cameras, motion sensors, even traps rigged to slow us down." Daniel frowned. "And you're sure we can handle this?" "I'm not asking you to do much," Maya replied coolly. "Just keep your eyes open and follow my lead. If things go sideways, don't panic. Got it?" "Got it," Daniel muttered, though his stomach churned with nerves. He wasn't used to taking orders, especially from someone he'd once dismissed so carelessly. But deep down he knew Maya was the expert here. If anyone could navigate this mess, it was her. They reached a heavy metal door secured with a digital lock. Maya pulled out a small device and connected it to the panel, typing rapidly as lines of code scrolled across its screen. After a few tense moments, the door clicked open, revealing a sprawling underground lab. Inside, the space was chaotic but organized. Tables were cluttered with alien artifacts, glowing orbs, metallic shards, and strange devices that hummed softly. Wires snaked along the floor, connecting everything to a central console that pulsed with an ominous red light. It was clear whoever was working here had been experimenting with the technology, trying to harness its power. Maya stepped forward cautiously, scanning the room. "This setup, it's risky," she murmured. "If they don't know what they're doing, they could trigger a catastrophic reaction." "What kind of reaction?" Daniel asked, his voice tinged with unease. "Think explosion, but worse," Maya replied. "Alien tech isn't stable. One wrong move, and it could release enough energy to level half the city." Daniel swallowed hard, his earlier bravado fading fast. He glanced around nervously, half expecting something to explode right then and there. But Maya remained calm, moving methodically as she examined the equipment. Suddenly, a faint sound echoed through the room. A footstep. Maya froze, raising a hand to signal silence. Daniel instinctively crouched low, his heart pounding. They weren't alone. From the shadows emerged a group of armed mercenaries, their faces hidden behind black masks. Each carried weapons that looked advanced, far beyond standard issue. One of them spoke into a radio, his voice distorted. "We've found intruders. Moving in." Maya cursed under her breath. "We need to get out of here. Now." Before either of them could move, the mercenaries opened fire. Bright flashes of energy shot past them, narrowly missing as they dove for cover behind a stack of crates. Daniel scrambled to pull out his gun, his hands shaking as he returned fire. Maya, however, stayed composed, pulling a sleek, futuristic weapon from her bag. It crackled with blue energy as she aimed carefully, firing precise shots that disabled two of the attackers' weapons. "Stay low," Maya shouted, grabbing Daniel's arm and pulling him further into the chaos. "There's too many of them." Daniel obeyed, crawling alongside her as they made their way toward the exit. But the mercenaries were relentless, closing in from all sides. Sparks flew as bullets ricocheted off metal surfaces, filling the air. "With smoke and noise, we're trapped!" Daniel yelled, panic creeping into his voice. "No, we're not," Maya said firmly. She pointed to a ventilation shaft high on the wall. "Boost me up." Without hesitation, Daniel cupped his hands and lifted her, allowing her to climb into the narrow passage. Once inside, she turned and extended a hand to help him up. Together, they crawled through the tight space, the sound of pursuit growing, fainter behind them. After what felt like an eternity, they emerged onto the roof of the building. The cold night air hit them like a slap, but neither stopped to catch their breath. Maya quickly assessed their surroundings, spotting a ladder leading down to the street below. "Come on," she urged, sliding down first. Daniel followed closely, adrenaline still coursing through his veins. They reached the ground just as the first wave of mercenaries burst out of the building, searching frantically for them. Maya grabbed Daniel's arm again, dragging him into the shadows of a nearby alley. They pressed themselves against the wall, staying silent as footsteps thundered past. Once the coast was clear, Maya finally allowed herself a moment to breathe. She leaned against the brick wall, her chest rising and falling as she processed what had just happened. Daniel stood beside her, his face pale but determined. "That was insane," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "How did you stay so calm back there?" "It's part of the job," Maya replied simply. "You learn to focus on the mission no matter what." Daniel shook his head in disbelief. "I don't know how you do it. I've never seen anything like that before." For the first time since they'd met, Maya gave him a small, almost imperceptible smile. "You held your own pretty well for someone who's never dealt with alien tech or mercenaries." Daniel blinked, surprised by the compliment. "Thanks, I guess." As they caught their breath, Maya pulled out her phone and began typing furiously. "We need to report this," she said. "Someone's using stolen alien tech to build weapons. If we don't stop them soon, innocent people are going to get hurt." Daniel nodded, feeling a strange sense of purpose wash over him. For years, he'd gone through the motions of his job, thinking it was all about authority and control. But now, standing beside Maya, he realized there was more to it than that. There was a real chance to make a difference, to protect people instead of pushing them away. "What's next?" he asked, surprising even himself with his eagerness. Maya looked at him, her expression unreadable for a moment. Then she gestured toward her car. "We regroup, plan our next move, and this time, we'll be ready." As they walked away from the alley, Daniel couldn't help but feel a spark of hope. Things were far from perfect, but maybe, just maybe, he was starting to change. And with Maya leading the way, he knew they stood a fighting chance against whatever lay ahead. The partnership between Daniel Carter and Maya Johnson had come a long way since their rocky start. What began as forced cooperation born out of necessity slowly evolved into something resembling trust. They weren't friends, not yet, but they were learning to rely on each other. For Daniel, it was a humbling experience. Every day he saw glimpses of Maya's brilliance, courage, and dedication, forcing him to confront his own prejudices. And for Maya, working with Daniel gave her hope that even the most stubborn minds could change. Their investigation into the alien tech smuggling ring had taken them deeper into Chicago's underworld than either of them anticipated. Maya pieced together clues that pointed to a massive operation hidden beneath an abandoned factory on the city's outskirts. According to her intel, this was where the smugglers stored and experimented with the stolen artifacts. If they could raid the facility and seize the tech, they might finally put an end to the conspiracy. But Maya knew better than to underestimate their enemies. Whoever was running this operation wasn't just dangerous, they were smart. She spent hours preparing, mapping out every possible route and contingency plan. When she briefed Daniel on the mission, his expression shifted from skepticism to grim determination. "You sure about this?" Daniel asked, studying the map she'd laid out on the hood of her car. "This doesn't feel like a typical bust." "It's not," Maya replied bluntly. "These people are professionals. They've got weapons, tech, and training. We go, in quiet, take what we need, and get out before they know we're there." Daniel nodded, though his stomach churned with unease. He wasn't used to operating like this, stealthy and calculated. His usual methods involved brute force and loud commands, but if Maya said this was the way to do it, he trusted her judgment. After everything they'd been through, he owed her that much. That night, under the cover of darkness, Maya and Daniel approached the factory. The building loomed ahead, its windows shattered and walls covered in graffiti. It looked deserted, but both of them knew appearances could be deceiving. Maya signaled for Daniel to stay low as they crept toward the entrance. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of oil and ozone. Faint humming noises echoed through the corridors, growing louder as they ventured deeper. Strange lights flickered in the distance, blue, green, and purple glows that pulsed rhythmically. Maya motioned for Daniel to follow her silently, her movements precise and deliberate. They reached a large open room filled with alien artifacts scattered across tables and shelves. Some of the objects glowed softly, while others emitted faint electrical crackles. In the center of the room stood a massive machine connected to wires and cables snaking along the floor. It pulsed with energy, its surface etched with symbols that seemed to shift and shimmer like liquid. "This is it," Maya whispered, her voice barely audible. "We need to disable that machine and grab whatever data they've collected." Before Daniel could respond, a sharp sound pierced the silence, a footstep. Both of them froze, turning toward the source of the noise. From the shadows emerged a group of armed mercenaries, their faces obscured by masks. Each carried advanced weapons that looked far beyond standard issue. One of them spoke into a radio, his voice distorted. "Intruders detected. Lock them down." Maya cursed under her breath. "We've been made. Move." She grabbed Daniel's arm, pulling him behind a stack of crates as the mercenaries opened fire. Bright flashes of energy shot past them, narrowly missing as they dove for cover. Daniel scrambled to pull out his gun, his hands shaking as he returned fire. Maya, however, stayed composed, pulling a sleek, futuristic weapon from her bag. It crackled with blue energy as she aimed carefully, firing precise shots that disabled two of the attackers' weapons. "Stay low," Maya shouted, keeping her voice steady despite the chaos erupting around them. "If we can reach the control panel, we can shut this place down." Daniel nodded, following her lead as they moved through the room, using whatever cover they could find. Sparks flew as bullets ricocheted off metal surfaces, filling the air with smoke and noise. The mercenaries were relentless, closing in from all sides. "We're trapped," Daniel yelled, panic creeping into his voice. "No, we're not," Maya said firmly. She pointed to a ventilation shaft high on the wall. "Boost me up." Without hesitation, Daniel cupped his hands and lifted her, allowing her to climb into the narrow passage. Once inside, she turned and extended a hand to help him up. Together, they crawled through the tight space, the sound of pursuit growing fainter behind them. After what felt like an eternity, they emerged onto the roof of the building. The cold night air hit them like a slap, but neither stopped to catch their breath. Maya quickly assessed their surroundings, spotting a ladder leading down to the street below. "Come on," she urged, sliding down first. Daniel followed closely, adrenaline still coursing through his veins. They reached the ground just as the first wave of mercenaries burst out of the building, searching frantically for them. Maya grabbed Daniel's arm again, dragging him into the shadows of a nearby alley. They pressed themselves against the wall, staying silent as footsteps thundered past. Once the coast was clear, Maya finally allowed herself a moment to breathe. She leaned against the brick wall, her chest rising and falling as she processed what had just happened. Daniel stood beside her, his face pale but determined. "That was insane," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "How did you stay so calm back there?" "It's part of the job," Maya replied simply. "You learn to focus on the mission no matter what." Daniel shook his head in disbelief. "I don't know how you do it. I've never seen anything like that before." For the first time since they'd met, Maya gave him a small, almost imperceptible smile. "You held your own pretty well for someone who's never dealt with alien tech, or mercenaries." Daniel blinked, surprised by the compliment. "Thanks, I guess." As they caught their breath, Maya pulled out her phone and began typing furiously. "We need to report this," she said. "Someone's using stolen alien tech to build weapons. If we don't stop them soon, innocent people are going to get hurt." Daniel nodded, feeling a strange sense of purpose wash over him. For years, he'd gone through the motions of his job thinking it was all about authority and control. But now, standing beside Maya, he realized there was more to it than that. There was a real chance to make a difference, to protect people instead of pushing them away. "What's next?" he asked, surprising even himself with his eagerness. Maya looked at him, her expression unreadable for a moment. Then she gestured toward her car. "We regroup, plan our next move, and this time, we'll be ready." As they walked away from the alley, Daniel couldn't help but feel a spark of hope. Things were far from perfect, but maybe, just maybe, he was starting to change. And with Maya leading the way, he knew they stood a fighting chance against whatever lay ahead. The betrayal hit hard, and it came from a place neither Daniel nor Maya expected. For days they had worked together, slowly building a fragile trust as they unraveled the conspiracy surrounding the alien tech. But now that trust was shattered, because someone on their team had sold them out. It started with a routine meeting. Maya and Daniel were reviewing evidence in a safe house when an encrypted message popped up on Maya's laptop. At first glance, it seemed like another update on the smugglers' movements, but as Maya scanned the text, her expression darkened. "What is it?" Daniel asked, noticing her sudden tension. "We've been compromised," she said sharply, closing the laptop. "Someone leaked our plans. They know where we're going next." Daniel's stomach sank. "Who would do that?" Maya shook her head. "I don't know yet. But whoever it is, they've tipped off Victor Lang, the man behind all this." "Victor Lang," Daniel repeated, his voice heavy with dread. He'd heard the name before. Victor Lang was a wealthy industrialist with ties to illegal arms deals and corrupt politicians. If he was involved, things were about to get much worse. "We need to move," Maya said, grabbing her bag. "If Lang knows we're coming, he'll be prepared, and we can't afford to let him win." They left the safe house quickly, heading toward the location Maya had uncovered, a hidden underground facility deep in the outskirts of Chicago. As they drove, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling of unease. Something about this whole situation felt wrong, like they were walking straight into a trap. And unfortunately, his instincts were right. When they arrived at the facility, it was eerily quiet. Too quiet. The entrance was unguarded, which should have raised alarms immediately, but desperation pushed them forward. Maya led the way, her weapon drawn as they descended into the depths of the complex. Inside, the air was thick with tension. Strange machinery hummed softly in the background, and the faint glow of alien artifacts illuminated the corridors. It was clear this place was more than just a storage site, it was a testing ground. Lang wasn't just smuggling alien tech. He was weaponizing it. Suddenly, the lights flickered, plunging the hallway into darkness. Before either of them could react, gunfire erupted from all sides. Mercenaries appeared out of nowhere, their weapons blazing. Maya reacted instantly, pulling Daniel into cover behind a large piece of equipment. "This is bad," Daniel muttered, peeking around the corner to assess the situation. There were too many of them, heavily armed and strategically positioned. "We're outnumbered." "Stay close," Maya ordered, her voice steady despite the chaos. She fired back with precision, taking down 2 mercenaries before ducking back into cover. "We need to find Lang. He's here somewhere." Daniel nodded, though fear gnawed at him. This wasn't like the raid in the warehouse district, it was far more dangerous. These mercenaries weren't playing around. Every shot fired felt like it could be their last. As they fought their way deeper into the facility, Daniel noticed something odd. One of the mercenaries seemed familiar, almost like his eyes widened in realization. "That guy," he whispered urgently, pointing to a figure in the distance. "He's one of ours." From Internal Affairs, Maya followed his gaze, her jaw tightening. So that's how they knew we were coming. Before they could process the full implications, another wave of attackers closed in. Maya and Daniel exchanged a quick glance, silently agreeing to push forward. They couldn't afford to waste time dealing with every mercenary. They needed to reach Lang. Finally, after what felt like hours of fighting, they reached a massive chamber at the heart of the facility. In the center stood Victor Lang himself, surrounded by guards and overseeing a team of scientists working on a massive alien device. The machine pulsed with energy, its surface etched with glowing symbols that shifted and shimmered like liquid. "You're too late," Lang sneered as Maya and Daniel entered the room. "This technology will change the world, and I'll be the one to sell it to the highest bidder." Maya stepped forward, her weapon trained on him. "You have no idea what you're messing with. That thing isn't stable. If you activate it, you'll destroy everything within miles." Lang laughed, unfazed. "Empty threats won't stop progress, Agent Johnson. You should have stayed out of my way." Before Maya could respond, one of the mercenaries fired a shot. It grazed her arm, forcing her to dive for cover. Daniel moved to shield her, but another bullet struck him in the side, sending him sprawling to the ground. "Daniel!" Maya shouted, panic flashing across her face for the first time. She crawled over to him, applying pressure to his wound, to slow the bleeding. "Stay with me," she urged, her voice trembling. "I'm fine," Daniel groaned, though his pale face told a different story. "Go stop him." Maya hesitated, torn between helping Daniel and stopping Lang. But there was no time to waste. With a final glance at Daniel, she stood and charged toward Lang, using every ounce of skill and determination she possessed. The mercenaries tried to intercept her, but Maya fought back fiercely, disabling anyone who got in her way. She reached the control panel for the alien device and began frantically typing commands, trying to disable it before Lang could activate it. "You'll never stop me," Lang yelled, lunging toward her. But Maya was faster. She sidestepped him, delivering a swift kick that sent him crashing to the floor. With seconds to spare, Maya managed to override the system, triggering a self-destruct sequence. Alarms blared throughout the facility as red warning lights flashed overhead. "We need to go." "Now!" Maya shouted, grabbing Daniel and helping him to his feet. Together they stumbled out of the chamber, dodging falling debris and collapsing structures as the facility began to collapse around them. Behind them, Lang screamed in rage, trapped in the destruction he had caused. By the time they reached the surface, the entire complex was engulfed in flames. Exhausted and battered, Maya and Daniel collapsed onto the damp grass, gasping for air. "You did it," Daniel rasped, managing a weak smile despite his pain. "You stopped him." Maya shook her head. "We did it. Together. For the first time." Daniel truly understood what teamwork meant. Not just following orders, but trusting each other and fighting for something bigger than themselves. As sirens wailed in the distance, signaling the arrival of backup, Maya looked down at Daniel, her expression softening. "You saved my life back there," she said quietly. "Thank you." Daniel chuckled weakly. "Guess I'm not such a lost cause after all." Maya smiled faintly. "No, you're not." As they waited for help to arrive, both of them knew their journey wasn't over. But for now, they had won, and in that moment, that was enough. Weeks passed since the destruction of Victor Lang's underground facility. Life slowly returned to normal, or as close to normal as it could get after such a harrowing ordeal. For Daniel Carter, the experience had changed him in ways he never expected. What started as a forced partnership with Special Agent Maya Johnson turned into something far more meaningful, a chance to confront his own biases and make amends for years of poor choices. Daniel sat nervously on a stage at a public forum hosted by the Chicago Police Department. The event was part of a new initiative aimed at improving relations between law enforcement and the community. Officers were encouraged to share their stories, both the good and the bad, in hopes of fostering transparency and trust. Today, Daniel had volunteered to speak. As he adjusted the microphone in front of him, he glanced out at the audience. It was a diverse group of people, young and old, from all walks of life. Some looked skeptical, while others seemed genuinely curious. Taking a deep breath, Daniel began to speak. "I'm not going to stand here and pretend I've always been perfect," he admitted, his voice steady despite the nerves churning in his stomach. "In fact, I've made some pretty big mistakes. One of them almost cost me my career, and nearly got someone hurt." He paused, letting his words sink in. A few people shifted uncomfortably in their seats, but most remained silent, listening intently. A few weeks ago, I let my anger and prejudice cloud my judgment, Daniel continued. I attacked a federal agent because she didn't fit my idea of who should be in charge. But what I didn't realize at the time was that she wasn't just any agent. She was one of the bravest, most capable people I've ever met. The crowd murmured softly, intrigued by his confession. Daniel went on to describe how Maya had saved his life during their mission to stop Victor Lang. He talked about the dangers they faced together, the alien tech, the mercenaries, the betrayal, and how working alongside her forced him to see things differently. Maya taught me something important, he said, his tone growing firmer. She showed me that respect isn't about titles or uniforms. It's about recognizing the value in everyone, no matter where they come from or what they look like. And if I can learn that lesson, anyone can. By the time he finished speaking, the audience erupted into applause. Some even stood, showing their support. Daniel felt a weight lift off his shoulders. For so long he'd carried guilt and shame over his actions. Now he finally felt like he was taking steps toward redemption. Meanwhile, across town, Maya Johnson sat alone on a bench in a quiet park. The morning sun cast long shadows across the grass and the air smelled fresh after a light rain. She watched. As joggers passed by, children played on swings and couples strolled hand in hand. It was peaceful, a stark contrast to the chaos she'd endured recently. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, pulling her out of her thoughts. When she checked the screen, she saw a text message from her superior. Mission debrief tomorrow. New assignment waiting. Maya smiled faintly, knowing her work was far from over. There would always be another threat, another conspiracy to uncover. But for now, she allowed herself a moment of rest. As she sat there, she thought about Daniel. Their partnership may have ended officially, but the bond they formed remained. Despite everything, Daniel had proven himself when it mattered most. He hadn't just followed orders, he'd risked his life to protect hers. That kind of courage deserved recognition. A little girl approached her, tugging on her mother's hand and pointing at Maya. "Mommy, why does she look so strong?" the child asked innocently. The mother chuckled. "Because she is, sweetheart. People like her keep us safe." Maya couldn't help but smile at the comment. Strength wasn't something she wore on the surface. It came from within, forged through challenges and resilience. And though her job often took her into darkness, moments like this reminded her why she fought so hard. Later that evening, Maya received an unexpected visitor at her apartment. It was Daniel, still recovering from his injuries but determined to see her one last time before she moved on to her next mission. "I wanted to thank you again," he said, standing awkwardly in her doorway, "for everything." Maya stepped aside, inviting him in. "You don't have to thank me. You held your own out there. I couldn't have done it without you." Daniel hesitated, then nodded. "Still, I owe you. Not just for saving my skin, but for making me see things differently." They sat down in her living room, talking quietly about the future. Daniel shared his plans to continue advocating for reform within the police department, hoping to inspire change from within. Maya listened patiently, offering words of encouragement when needed. "You're going to do great things," she told him sincerely. "Just remember, real strength comes from humility. Keep learning, keep growing, and you'll make a difference." Daniel smiled, grateful for her wisdom. "What about you? Any idea where your next mission will take you?" Maya shrugged. "Who knows? But wherever it is, I'll be ready." After a while, Daniel stood to leave. As he reached the door, he turned back to face her. "Take care of yourself, okay? And maybe we'll cross paths again someday." "I'd like that," Maya replied with a small smile. With that, Daniel left, disappearing into the night. Maya closed the door behind him, feeling a strange mix of emotions. Pride, gratitude, and a hint of sadness, all rolled into one. But above all, she felt hope. Hope that people like Daniel could change, that humanity could overcome its flaws, and that even in the face of unimaginable odds, courage and determination could prevail. As she prepared for bed, Maya glanced out her window at the stars twinkling in the sky. Somewhere out there, beyond Earth's boundaries, lay mysteries waiting to be uncovered, and she knew without a doubt that she would be ready to face whatever came next. The story ends not with a definitive conclusion, but with the promise of new beginnings. Both Maya and Daniel had grown in ways neither could have anticipated. They weren't perfect, but they were trying, and sometimes that was enough.